budget. Is that okay? Okay. So as far as the A budget, we understand the work that the county is trying to do to take care of our employees, and we support whatever work that may be. So we're not asking for anything above and beyond at this point for our staff. We just appreciate what the county can provide. As we slide down, if it's okay, I'm just going to hit the areas where we're making a change. Is that okay?
Yeah, you didn't pay money in for overtime. Do you think you can do without that?
I didn't change the overtime budget on there.
Well,
Last year it was the 40,000, 10,000 on the split. Oh, I just didn't even put anything in there, did I?
yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So I would appreciate the 10,000 for overtime. Although we're trying not to use it. As a matter of fact, we just got done with high school rodeo, which was an awesome event. We did have an employee get a ton of hours that kind of puts them over the top of the comp time limit, which we try to do, and so we're going to pay that as overtime.
240?
Actually, they will not be able over that. They'll be close to that. So, anyway, we've been pretty good stewards of our overtime budget, but it's nice to have that there when we need it. So that is a oversight on my part. And then the 40,000 that we asked for extra help. This year's been kind of a weird year because you cannot find people to hire. As we sat down at the beginning of the year and looked at seasonal help, to be honest with you, I thought, oh man, if we hire as much as this can pay for, it will be tight still getting everything done, but then nobody applies. So we have, I think that we may be able to offer a third part-time person, but we'll still be a little bit short, or we'll still return money this year from that. But I would not necessarily want to reduce that this year. I just want to see what we can get as time goes on and things change. Down to our B budget. Everything that we have in our B budget, I kept, for the most part, I kept the same, just because I really want to see. I need to see exactly what we spend. Our operational supplies this year, because of some. Actually, not operational supplies. Our operating supplies. Because of some billing issues last year, we kind of flooded into that one heavy this year.
4Js. And they came right
Yeah,
with 4Js.
there's 4Js, and then there was I think an invoice from the 4th of July
Yeah.
that was submitted. So anyway, those two things kind of hit us hard on that one, and so I think that we'll still be able to use that same amount in the future. It's just this year's kind of an anomaly. The clothing we kept at $4,000, as we have increased our staff members, the number of staff, trying to outfit people with the safety equipment and the clothing necessary to do their jobs. I think if we looked at doing it all in 1 year, that's not enough money, but doing it consecutive years, I believe that we can buy a few things this year and then buy a few things next year, and over time we'll be able to outfit people. The one thing about the clothing that we've provided for people is that it's county clothing, not necessarily personal clothing, and so like the coats that we've purchased, if we have people turn over, we'll actually keep the coats and then just reissue them if possible to try to save funds. So if we go down to the line on education.
Quick jump up real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
You didn't budget anything for City Works?
I just put on there that it was for City Works. I just figured whatever that cost was going to be that we would have that in there.
We need to throw $96.50 in there.
Yeah.
$650.
So I just put in there it was City Works because that's not necessarily our.
And I did mention to Emma that it would be best to have her promotion money in her budget so that she has the control, because she may need to do more money for the event center and less somewhere else, or vice versa. I think it gives us better flexibility.
I agree with that as
Discussion
well.
this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
How come she's taking it out of our budget? No.
I agree with that as well. So on the education and training, one of the things that we have a few positions, 4 positions in our department that have a CDL not requirement, it's kind of a soft requirement. We have to have people with CDLs, but we have positions that, so they don't, it's not a required thing for everybody to get hired on. But with CDL, the changes in the CDL law, it's now become cost prohibitive for people to just come get their CDL. They used to be able to come to us, study their book, get a learner's permit. We could allow them to drive the trucks. They could get some experience. We had a guy that would come up and do a test for us for relatively cheap, and we can get somebody a CDL for a pretty reasonable fee. Now they have to take a course, which is about $5,000 and 3 weeks of time. And so I'm sure like the people that have to have CDLs, like the landfill and Road and Bridge have talked about how hard it is to hire people with CDLs because of the market for them. And so I just threw in that there probably needs to be a discussion, not necessarily to bump that cost up. I just felt like that was a good earmark to have a discussion on that.
Well, I'd say we ought to put $10,000 in there and have the discussion. I mean, how do we do that? How do we reimburse people? But as long as we're talking about budget right now, if you was able to reimburse somebody $5,000 that they had to pay to go to school or something of that nature for the job, I think it's worth putting in there just to have a further discussion so that at least we're talking about it.
I think there's some options out there. I know that when we ran corrections officers through our academy, it cost us $15,000 to put them through the academy. We made them sign a 2-year contract. If they left before 2 years was up, they had to pay us back that prorated amount. And so I think there's some opportunities to where we can, if somebody comes and works for us, we could put together a contract like that. Pretty standard. But again, I threw that in for discussion's sake, because if we do go down that path, the $3,000 is not necessarily going to cover that amount, those things.
I just wonder where the line is on other positions that are required to have certain licensings. Do we reimburse everybody or just CDLs, post?
That's
things like that?
a discussion that
Well,
we'll have.
it's if it's a requirement for the job is typically what it is. So like, I mean, if you're required to have an accounting degree for
You gonna reimburse them?
that, probably not the degree, but the certification. But if you have to take a test yearly or hold a posting, having a degree is part of the requirement for the event, but the event itself, whatever, if there's those certifications, those kind of things. Now, the problem is too, is we say, well, where do we draw the line? Well, the problem is you're actually using it as a benefit to attract, you have all your bar licenses and stuff that we pay for all the attorneys every year.
Well, we don't pay them for their degree.
No, but we pay them for all their licensing.
But-
We pay for if
Well,
they're.
we don't pay for these guys to keep up their CDL, do we?
No, and this probably is not
Back to
necessarily
the
the
trade-off.
this probably isn't necessarily the time for the bigger discussion, but my thought would be more along the lines of pay them while they attend the course for their own expense. So it's a 3-week course, pay them to attend the course, and then the cost of their hourly wage that they earn during those 3-week period of time, that would be the contract that they'd have to pay back. But they'd still have to pony up for the course.
I mean,
But that's the
this
discussion
is-
we have, and that's
Sure.
why I say
So
put another
then-
$10,000 in there, just so that we can have that
The
conversation.
main thing is we have to get
Go
more.
down than it is to go up.
Yeah.
We have to get a lot more creative in recruiting, and this is one of the easiest ways that people do it.
The
And you do
landfill, the sheriff's office,
road and bridge.
these 6, we've done the exact same thing already this year, in my opinion.
So do we want this to be 13,000 or?
I'd put 13,000
Okay.
because, I mean, basically, we're talking
2 a year.
two
How many guys
people.
need
Okay.
their CDLs up there?
4. Well, we have four positions that have them. We currently have 2 people with CDLs, and then that's not true. We have 4 people with CDLs, including Annie. But the vehicles that we drive are manual transmission, so we have 2 people that can drive those vehicles,
Not including any.
not including Annie.
Well, because I got it 100 years ago, could I be grandfathered in?
Her CDL was like horse-drawn. We're getting a little off base, so we'll just reel her back in.
Well, that's what I was just kind of asking. If you need to get 2 people CDLs, will the 10,000 cover it, or do we need to go just a little higher to be on the safe side?
My thought is I would keep it at most where I was at, and I would probably maybe instead of doing 13,000, maybe request 10,000, because that's primarily what I would send people to training for. So there may be conferences at some point if we delve into different worlds. There may be some conferences we need to head to, but really we would be looking at CDL stuff. That would allow me to certify 2 people a year, and that would keep me going if I could not hire anybody with a CDL. So really,
And that's assuming you have that turnover every year too, because
we'd
you
have
might
to watch
get,
that.
you might get 4 people, and you might not have to send anybody to a school for
Yeah.
a while because they're there. And then what you're doing is you're looking at, they're up, I mean, if they're there, then
10,000 total.
then you keep them, yeah.
Honestly, I'd put it at 13. I mean, 3,000 is not gonna make a big difference on that line item.
Yeah.
And then, because education needs to become important in every department.
Sure.
I don't, that part of that. If there's something that comes up and we need to educate our people to make them more valuable to us and make them feel better, $3,000 is not a lot to me for morale.
Awesome. Down to the fuel additives, we have $20,000 allocated. Obviously, fuel has gone through the roof. I think we'll find out. I just put in there whatever the increases that the county sees on fuel. We're gonna be paying what we pay. There's nothing that we can do to really mitigate that cost.
So on that one,
we can watch it as we get through the,
If we kind of follow what Road and Bridge did, it'd be about a 40% increase. That takes 28,000 if we want to use them as a measuring stick.
you want 28 then?
I'd say that as we're talking
Yeah,
to start
as we're
with,
watching it, you can just leave it, and then we'll just change it as we
like you always
get
said, we can
closer.
go down, but we can't go up.
And
By the time we're working on the clerk's recommendation, we'll have almost 9 months. So that gives us a little bit better trend information.
Yeah,
And we'll see
We're,
what fuel
Good.
prices are doing then again, so.
And closer in September, we'll be 90% through our busy season. We'll be able to look at our usage and probably forecast for next year a better picture too, where we're at. Outside of that, I just am requesting essentially the same footprint that we had last year.
I had a question for you, Scott.
Yeah.
On your repairs for your vehicles, you've got 15,000. Last year you had 20. Your year-to-date's only 2,100.
So we run all of our vehicle repairs through Road and Bridge, and sometimes the billing that we get is I guess a little slow at times, and it's based upon what they can accomplish. And so sometimes we have vehicles that we try to get in on their schedule.
Well, I just, like in 20, it says you spent 32. 21, it says you spent 10.3. Those are pretty substantial swings. And I know you guys are using your equipment pretty hard.
We are.
And you
So-
just experienced a bunch of equipment issues.
I've got to say that, like, I love the way Road and Bridge is taking care of us with this stuff. They really do take care of us on this stuff, and so we have some aged equipment. We have also tried to be cognizant of their schedule and see if there's things that we can fix. Now, that's not always the best option. We had a stick shift break off of one of our gators, and our staff got on and re-welded some stuff together for us. I mean, we're using belling twine and some wire that eventually is going to come back on us, right? Like, but for right now, we're just trying to be as frugal as we can. We do have some old equipment. Our water truck died on us in the middle of high school rodeo, and we were able to use a water truck from Road and Bridge for a couple days. But that old water truck that we have, that 1948 whatever Ford, is the best for doing what we do. Like, it is hands down the best for doing what we do. And so, as long as we can keep that old guy running, we want to keep doing it. But I can't really justify other than we're really trying to be frugal right now. This is the first year running this budget for me, and I just want to save where I can save and kind of pinch where I can pinch, because I also know at some point I'm going to come in and ask for some help with some equipment. And so we're just doing the best we can.
So along that line, snow grooming had to go to Western States because Road and Bridge didn't have the time to do their work. So you gotta be cognizant of that also. If we have to have somebody else do it and Road and Bridge isn't available, then you gotta have the funds to pay somebody else too.
So one of the things so we do have a pretty handy diesel mechanic that works for us. And we have worked
Annie's
with.
got enough work to do.
She does. But we have done enough discussion, we've had enough discussion with Road and Bridge that if it is some issues, some items that we can fix, we always make sure we have permission first. And every time I've gone to them and said, hey, look, we really need this piece of equipment, it's got to be done, can you do it? They get us in.
Okay.
So I haven't necessarily experienced that to this point. They honestly have been very good with us to get us in and get us taken care of. But I also, if it's something I don't need to ask for, then I don't. Right?
Well, they are asking for another mechanic because
Yeah. I would look at, honestly, Jeff, I don't have enough information. I'm trying to get my stuff fixed the way we can, but I don't have enough information to justify why we were really high.
I
And then
just know that
progressively lower, I don't
you've
know.
got some aging equipment, I just want to make
Mhm.
sure that that's enough.
And they also had, in prior years, before they started leasing vehicles, they had some older vehicles that I think.
Caused a lot of
maybe-
problems.
Yeah.
I've got some broke down trucks right now that are just sitting because we're not using them. But some of the changes we've made over the last couple of years to go to golf carts and gators instead of full-size vehicles pays off for us. I mean, we may use a golf cart or a gator, and then you spend $7,500 or maybe 15,000 for a Ranger or something like that, but it's nowhere near 60,000 for a new vehicle. And so that's part of that as well.
Fuel economy's gonna be better too.
Speaking of with some of those vehicles, we just talked to Road and Bridge, and they were talking about Mosquito, and their area has some side-by-side, or
Four-wheel.
four-wheelers and stuff like that, right-sizing there. Is there anything in that equipment that you guys can use?
For
Or
sure.
Is there stuff that you could take that you couldn't use, but we could probably look at your old stuff, their old stuff, and getting rid of it, and then using funds to try and get something better?
For sure. And some of the things, and I'll give you an example, like I think Road and Bridge has a dump truck this year that they're getting a new dump truck in. As soon as they get the old one, they're looking to auction it off. If I can find the funds in my budget this year, it's something that I would come talk to the commission about. No.
You don't have to buy it.
Well,
Acquisition it,
sure.
because at that
We'll
point
just
it's,
reallocate it.
Yeah.
It's depreciated.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
depreciated to zero, then there's no, it's a dollar.
Yeah.
Because
So for me, it's much easier, like, we have been using, dump trucks, and that's a line that says, like, I can take an older dump truck and maybe we just put a little bit of work into it like we're doing with a lot of our stuff. But the things that I use every day, our tractors, our backhoe, you'll see. Like, if I took our backhoe to be replaced, Jeff, we would burst through that $15,000 budget in one vehicle.
Right.
I mean, if we just took the backhoe that as it is right now, and we took it over there and said, starter's out, transmission's bad, these parts, they just don't do it. That would be 15,000 just in that one vehicle. And so we're milking it along for a little bit.
Okay.
So, anyway.
The other question I had is looking at your maintenance soccer fields and landscaping. You haven't spent nearly that amount of money on either of those line items for the last 2 years. Am I missing something? Why are we budgeting for that and then not spending it?
The reason that is relatively low at the beginning of this year is because I did not want to overexpend my budget. I was worried that when we turned the sprinklers back on that we'd have 1 million broken pipes and we'd have a bunch of issues. We will spend on our landscaping. We're going to come in close just because in fertilizer this year
you can use
alone-
sod out of that too.
We can, for sure. So in fertilizer alone this year, we went with a more aggressive fertilizer that cost a lot more money. But to try to bring the wellness fields up, we had to add biologic in them. And so rather than fertilizing every 12 weeks, we have to fertilize every 8 weeks. And it cost a little bit more for that fertilizer. So I think you'll see that budget come up a little bit as we actually invest in those grounds.
For the landscaping?
In the landscaping, yeah.
Well,
And then if you look at some of the areas, I apologize, Commissioner Tovey, but if you look at some of the areas, like our volleyball courts, I mean, that would fall into those landscaping area. I could spend $20,000 in just sand. But but again, I started this budget year out really frugal because I didn't know what we were gonna hit. Last year when I came up and took over, we spent $15,000 on a new, on that line for the sprinkling up top. We spent a ton of money to try to get the money in, or to get the direct feed, but we were able to use waterways money for some of that stuff. So I was worried, so I have held back this year. I can't say for years previous, I'm just saying this year I held back a little bit because I just didn't know what we were gonna hit.
Well,
Last year was an unknown.
the last 2 years, we haven't resodded. In the last
Yeah.
2 years, there actually was a sod line up. They'd actually use that, and they would go in and they would spend. They'd
The-
sod,
there's a
they'd go
lot-
and sod, and we haven't done that.
There's a lot out of that landscaping budget. I could kill that budget really fast. I just have been careful, because you look at
Okay, well,
the,
that's fine, let's talk about
Yeah.
the soccer field though. The last 2 years, it hasn't been over what? We got 6,000 and 4,700 bucks. So why do we have 35,000 in there if we're not spending more than 6,000?
I'll spend it.
I mean, really,
I don't
those,
doubt that you
Well,
won't.
Guy left in April of last year.
yeah, nothing was done in those
And-
soccer fields for the I mean, the one year they spent, the year before Guy took over, I think Aaron spent $21,000 in sod up on those fields.
But we don't need sod right now.
Well, no, they do that they were doing that every year. They were going in and resod. That's how those holes disappeared every year. And we haven't done it for 3 years. That's what I've been saying is we've really got to go back and get rid of the mud holes or do something.
Well, they look great, so I'm not complaining
Yeah.
about
This-
where we're at, what we're doing.
This department is just really hard to look at trend
Yeah,
information
because
because of prior directors.
they change their
But-
mind all the time.
2
Now-
years ago, we were paying for water too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pocatello City, we were paying for
And so we had to
water.
hold back.
So, and I'm not trying to be, I most certainly will not be, just, loose with the county dollars. I want to make sure that we're being as tight as we can. I honestly, like, this year's budget, I held my guys back until after we de-winterized, and now I'm saying, okay, now what do we need to move forward? So things like, when you look at those maintenance for the soccer fields, that can include soccer nets, right? And so we bought soccer nets. We bought nets that probably were a little bit too lightweight for what we do. You look at some of the goalposts and some of just the maintenance, the fence work around those areas. There's a lot that would fall into that category that we could use to turn the grounds a little bit better. I have been holding us back just until because I just didn't know what to
Well,
expect.
I know we need to resod like where the goalies stand and all that.
Yeah,
That's a huge issue.
Well,
So
along the fence line, he's taking the fence line out. When I drove around with you here a couple of weeks ago,
which fence line?
taking the fence line between
Chubbuck
the
and
walking path and the
Road.
fields, and resodding that or
Oh.
planting that, and so that we don't have the weeds
Right.
in between the two.
On the north side, far
Yes.
north side, yeah.
Well,
I
and
mean,
It's so ugly.
I've driven
we need
around
to
it,
have
and it's-
we need to have a shed or something that we put, that variable pump that goes up there.
We do.
The pump and all that, we need to have a shed that was supposed to be built over the top of that on that concrete pad.
And that is something we have.
That's gotta get done to
done.
protect those, because that keeps people away from it as much as the elements, is what I'm, every time I drive by there, you see some kid standing on top of that pump, and you're like, please don't do that.
But that, Commissioner Huff, you can't argue with data, right? I can't argue with data. If we have underspent on in those budget areas, I feel that we have a good enough relationship. If you guys restrict some, or take some of those funds because they're needed in other places, and I have a greater need, I'll come back and ask for a greater need.
Well,
But
Christie does bring up a good point. We've had some rotating directors up there.
Well, the other thing too that I would say, if in that funds, if there are funds available, is I would be building fences as fast as possible to keep people off of a lot of those areas, because that's the problem that where you get a lot of it is people driving over stuff, people going places they shouldn't be going. That's where a lot of your maintenance and fixes have had to be in the past, is people would go take cars and drive over the field and bust 30 heads at the time as they drove over them,
The infield, I mean, that looks marvelous now compared to how it has looked. I mean, you're doing a lot of things, and
Yeah.
I want you to keep doing it.
Well, and some of those things, as our projects continue to move forward, I don't know if you guys noticed, we, in between the area Terrell likes to talk about, the fatal funnel, where we have a fence line here and a fence line here. we had 8 feet of sagebrush, perfect for people to hide in, right?
Mhm.
We went through and took all that stuff out. It doesn't cost any money, but it's also not a permanent solution. Really, what we need to do is grade that out, take the fence out, and then run sprinklers and lawn, right? So those are long-term projects that we can help beautify
The weed
facility.
fields that
But
we're just
we're just
asking to
taking it
catch on
slow.
fire.
That's all.
So we'll start getting some good trend information
Yeah.
now.
I typically do, when we do the clerk's recommendation, I do go through and do just what Jeff has done on every line, and if you've underspent quite a bit, then we'll cut it. So I'm guessing my recommendation will be a little cut on those.
And I know you guys have done them before. It freaks me out a little bit because we just didn't, I intentionally didn't spend money because I just didn't know what we were gonna encounter, right? Like, I was thinking worst case scenario, because last year we kind of encountered some worst case scenario stuff. So I thought, we're gonna turn this thing on, this pump's gonna fry, this is gonna go down. And so I definitely didn't spend where we probably could have spent on some of those issues.
Last year it
So-
was Jeff, Dan, and me up there digging in water lines that were breaking and all over everywhere. And if it would have been as bad as it was last year, to tell you the
Right.
truth, we could have
But-
easily spent that.
But Jason, I trust you
Yeah.
guys. You guys know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you
And
guys
I
know what
agree,
you need
it's
to work
that
for, so.
if something comes up, then we'll figure it out.
For sure.
Just for budgeting purposes, let's keep them tight as we can.
For sure, I agree, I support that. So if we flip the page and look over onto we have a special projects line. This last year it was $52,000, and that was for the creek bed. The creek bed, we have utilized as many avenues as we can to do that at a good cost to the county. We've used a little bit of equipment from Road and Bridge. They had some free gravel. We had our guys come in on weekends so that we could haul it without cost, or without a huge cost to the county. I think we're going to come in on that project significantly under budget. The big issue is just, it's been hard to get some of the equipment to rent. So we've got a Mini X up there right now, and we're grooming. If you get a chance to go up there and look at it, you can see where we're going to be putting the liner. We've already purchased the liner. It's on hand. I think we did that stuff out of the Waterways Fund, was the first usage. So I think that there's going to be a chunk of that money we're going to get back, which, is, I think that's the way we're supposed to work. If we can find ways to be frugal, then we're going to be frugal. Every year, however, we do have projects that are kind of special projects to work on. One of the things that one-time projects. Next year, I'd really like to focus on the volleyball court and on trees. Right, we had some issues with trees where they died. We need to get on that probably in January. We need to talk to the folks at the nurseries and make sure they can get us the right types of trees and the right volume of trees so we can buy some. The volleyball court, in my opinion, needs to be completely redone. We've got to go in there and pull all the sand out, put down some gravel layers, some mesh, some gravel, and a little drainage field, because there is an underground drainage flow that runs right underneath that, and so it just turns it into soppy mud. And so that is a project, I think, it's not that we don't have a lot of people that rent the volleyball courts. We have a lot of usage up there. We've had them down for this year. We took down the nets, and we've been using them as the sand as kind of an area to get back and forth between
You're flooding money.
the stream bed project. And so we've heard a lot about what's going on with the volleyball courts. We really want them up and running. But that's a bigger project to get those volleyball courts right. And the sand that you put in those volleyball courts is really expensive. And so we've got to have a way to kind of block the wind.
Why is the sand so expensive? We just approved Run Bridge to crush and clean gravel, so they should be cleaning. They should have whole piles of sand. It's already sieved and ready to go.
There's a different type of sand, something round, blah, 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 beach sand. Apparently people don't like the,
It's
in your face.
what's that?
But if you can turn the nets.
Yeah.
It's okay. The angular stuff is just
If they
okay.
don't spend all the money on that creek bed project this year, can they dedicate some of that to the volleyball courts next year? Can they carry those funds over?
You have to budget for it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yes.
that's my, okay.
Yeah,
But not if we use, not the money that we use for waterways money.
not
No.
waterways.
No, it has to be-
It has to be within this fund.
And we can try to, I would like to
Waterways is
continue to,
dedicated to,
Waterways,
Yeah.
okay.
I'd like to continue to try to access or use waterways funds for projects specific to the lake and the creek bed, the stream bed. There's a lot that can be done down there to try to beautify and bring that area up too. So, and so I'm requesting 15,000, although I think that we could probably just spend 15,000 on trees. I think the volleyball project is gonna be a little bit bigger, but, so if, that's just the request and what we use it for. As far as cellular telephones, there is now one of the things that we can do, we have the ability to do is to do an electronic SIM. So you can actually have a county phone and a personal phone, but just carry one phone, right? And that is a pretty minimal cost. I know, Shannon, I think you looked into that a little bit for us. It was like, I can't even remember, like $20 a month per line, or maybe a little bit more. But the reality is, we have 4 cell phones, no, 5 cell phones up there, and quite frankly, we probably could authorize more folks to carry them, because every one of us gets called a million times. As soon as people know your personal phone number, you're just getting blasted on it. And there's no time away from the complex. We get calls all the time. I would prefer to use that in that stipend mode rather than buy cell phone plans for everybody. If we use a stipend, then we could do the eSIM, and we could actually have a work phone number, but only carry one phone.
we might have to talk about that, just simply because how are you gonna make sure your employees are not working when they're not supposed to be working?
Well, all we really can do at this point is tell them,
Right.
when you come in and do work, you gotta clock in for it.
Yeah.
And so,
And when you're off work,
yeah,
but if you do the SIM card,
Mhm.
will they know if it's personal or work? Or are they gonna answer the phone and then it end up being work?
It identifies it as different.
Does it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
The ones that I've used before that have that, it'll actually say line 1 or
Okay.
line 2. And you can call,
Okay.
like, the phone that I had an Army phone that did that, and it would say, the number that I had programmed, and it would be Army office, or it would be,
Just because we wanna make sure that when they're off,
sure.
They're off, they're off.
unless you have them on call.
We don't have, we definitely don't have it on call, but they all get called.
I know.
Like, they all get called away from work. So, but I think I'd rather pay the, $25 or $30 a month stipend. It's still gonna fall well within this budget allocation, but I think I'd rather pay that stipend and have people get a secondary SIM card
So
that they
if we-
can use.
If we choose to do a stipend, that'll have to go up into A. So, I highlighted it so that we can discuss it.
Okay.
This is something the county hasn't done before, but if we do it, we do need to have a clearer policy, like Christy was talking about, of when it's okay to answer line 1, line 2, right, when it's not, along with equipment usage as well. Right now, when we pay a stipend, we don't buy your cell phone. If the county owns the cell phone, we'll replace or do chargers or things like that. But there's a separation there. This, to me, would just need to be defined what the county is going to do and what the employee is going to do. As far as the monthly charge rate, right now we're paying $40 a month for a cell phone. So this would be a cheaper option for the county, but again, we would need to just be clear on what the county is going to do as far as equipment reimbursement or not, and then the time that you actually spend.
Wouldn't it just fall into the same rules as a traditional stipend? I mean, the traditional stipend does the same thing. It's somebody uses their personal cell phone for work responsibilities, right? I mean, it's the same. We're just giving them $40 to use their personal cell phone. The only difference with this was there would be two different phones attached to one device. And so the rules, the regulations, who uses it, when they use it, how they do it, they would all be the same as a normal stipend, because I'm sure if you give out your personal phone and that's used you have a stipend on it, and people call you after hours, you have the same rules.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have the same rules to follow. So I imagine we wouldn't have to do a full policy or full investigative. I think it would just be the
Listed as
same.
Which way you're going to.
Yeah. I
And
think
then
we
just train the managers to tell their employees not to work off hours.
Sure.
Or clock it.
Or, I mean, like, one of the discussions we had too was about on-call. We've had that discussion too, and where our county currently, I mean, if we have somebody that works for Road and Bridge that plows roads, which our guys also plow roads, but they're on call, but they don't get compensated for being on call. They clock in when they go to work.
that's how it is right now.
That's what the issue would be, is it would be, if you are going to do work, you have to be authorized, pre-authorized to
Yeah.
be able to clock in to do work. And I think that is a management, I think that's something we could manage from a personnel standpoint. It would just make things a lot easier as far as trying to create a line of personal and work. I'd rather carry one phone.
It's within the same budget.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about now,
Yeah,
so.
we just have to figure out if it's A or B.
Yep.
Okay. The next one is lease vehicle. Our current lease vehicle, our current leases totals about $54,000 a year. We had, I think, $26,000 was what we were allocated. That is with turning in the one pickup truck that was roughly $750 a month. But with leasing 2 tractors, the copier, and 1 vehicle, it still puts us above our budgeted allocated amount. And then additionally, we need a backhoe. We need a backhoe. And so we can either do it as a capital purchase, that's about $150,000, or you can do it as a leased option, which the leased option, my only concern with leased options is the number of hours, the hour restrictions they put on you. So they, like with our tractors, they put hour restrictions on us, and we had to have that adjusted this year because we walk right through those hours. We use them too much. And the backhoe is a piece of equipment that we use 365 days a year, and we use the credit out of it. So it would, I think it's a better plan to purchase one than to lease one, but we could do either option.
If you purchase one, are you going to be able to keep it? I mean, is it going to be a long-term?
Oh, yeah.
Or are you going to want to use it,
The
be used
backhoe
and
that-
flip it?
No, the backhoe that they have up there is what, 1989?
Yeah, 82.
82? Yeah, it's, I mean, a backhoe up there, if you have a back, and that's the whole thing, is like the difference between the discussion we just had with like the road graders and all that other stuff. The stuff that they're gonna be using a backhoe up there for is not going to
It's
be.
not heavy use.
It's not this crazy.
Might be a lot of hours,
Yeah,
but it's not a lot of.
But it's
heavy
not
use.
they're not
Not beating the
gonna,
crap out of
well,
it.
they're not gonna switch off the bucket and put a jackhammer attachment and go bust rocks and,
True.
you're not doing that. And so purchasing up there would, and then actually what would make more sense, I actually talked to the cat rep. When we were up in Boise last year, they had a really pretty brand new backhoe sitting out there. They have a couple of the lease buyback options that you could probably get for, that are a low hour lease that's been redone. And
The market for equipment is just crazy.
you
right
can't
now.
find it. You
And
can't
so, but the one thing we're looking for on a backhoe is just a larger bucket.
Yeah, they're
Right,
backhoes.
because most of the stuff that we do is, you know, we muck a lot of horse stalls, and so we end up getting rid of a lot of waste, and so having a larger bucket.
What size is your backhoe up there that you have? That's a,
As far as bucket,
well, no, the backhoe itself, the machine.
610, isn't it?
it's a John Deere, yeah.
It's like a 314, 315, something like that.
It's a little big. It's pretty out of date. It's near impossible to find parts for anymore. To change the battery, you have to pull the cab off. No, actually not the battery, but
I don't think so.
no, you don't. Last time they got in to do some work, they had to pull the whole
They had
cab
to pull
off.
cab apart. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was laughing.
gotta speed me up.
Yep, let's go.
Get it
Sorry.
done. No, you're good.
I'm hurrying.
Just getting
You got
it.
7 minutes.
I'm done.
But you got 2 more departments to talk about too. We gotta talk concessions and we gotta talk
Yeah.
cost.
So on the horse bidding supplies, I know we have $4,000 in there.
I'll match that with revenue.
Okay, so what we want to do on that one is be able to have that on like a rotating cycle, because we have some large horse events that want to come to us and they want to buy $20,000 worth of bedding. So we're gonna have to buy it, sell it, replace it. So that's the only thing. It's like the concessions.
But as long as I've got the revenue that matches, you tell me
Great.
what expenses you want, we'll match the revenue.
Okay, great. And then as far as our property acquisitions, I'd really like to get into some new gators. Our gators are pretty beat up.
How much
But
will that be?
there's 3 gators that we have. The issue is I didn't get a price on them because they're just so expensive right now. So I figured we're gonna, you know, if I can get a good deal on them next year.
So you buy what you can with that ask?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay. Next department is this the
Concession.
Concession.
concessions, okay. So the concessions line item, with concession supplies, we had that marked at $200,000. I think that's in hopes of running a phenomenal year of knocking it out, and I think that we all had high hopes this year as we came out of last year. I don't think this is going to be a good data year, but that number is going to be high compared to where we've been at. So I simply just said let's keep it moving to see, because if we do have a banner year, we're going to want to be able to access that.
And this is another one that's revenue equals.
Yeah,
So
doesn't matter.
if they don't bring it in, they can't spend it. So it doesn't hurt us, it just gives us flexibility in that.
Do you know where you've been at so far this year on concessions?
On fees, like what we've brought in or what we've
Yeah.
made.
Both?
No.
Just curious
Yeah.
on just all aspects of different events and everything that we've been doing so far.
So
Timing hasn't been great.
No, so we've got our first month, like, from the RFP, and I want to say it was like $3,100 or something, and that, it just wasn't super great.
Was it what we made or what we sold?
Both. It's both, so it includes both what we made off of the RFP and what we actually sold as far as product. So the raw product cost is net zero for us. If we buy some stuff from Coke and then sell that inventory, it's zeros.
Yeah.
But typically, like with Coke, we have to, when we bring them back in to bring our machines up to speed, we buy all new syrup for the machines. So we spend a lot of money up front for the Coke stuff, and then over the life of the year, that money kind of comes back to us. As far as the bottles of water, that kind of stuff, that's pretty even in out. The food stuff is a little bit, is kind of tricky on that too, because we carry food a little bit longer. And right now, food's just really, really hard it's hit and miss on what's going to be available from one order to the next. So, but right now, we're just charging on everything that they're selling, we get paid back for.
And the last one is the trust, the event center trust. So if you go to your trust, to the back, it's about 4 pages back. The account is Trusts Event Center, it's $329,858.
On that one, we changed the, or we just updated, up the 4th of July budget, and I'm recommending $150,000 for next year for our 4th of July budget. Again, our goal is to try to go out and get sponsors for all that money, so that it will be a net zero for the county. And then $250 for the concerts. There are a lot of variables with this budget, and so I think at some point we probably need to have a greater discussion specifically related to this budget, but at this time, these are the things that I can forecast.
And where it says miscellaneous expenses, that's actually movies. Gotta add that to the description if we can. That's movies in the park.
Movies.
And movies do not generate any revenue for us.
That's the only one that's expenses only.
Yeah, that's expenses only. So does it make sense to have it come out of this budget, where this budget is generally?
No, we should probably move it to, we'll move it up to your
Yeah.
event center budget.
I think that would be a good thing in it, because we really don't generate any revenue on the movies. I think the goal at some point is to look for a sponsor to just cover the movies. And this year's, our movies this year that we've done I think we've probably tripled attendance, easily tripled. So, and it's just gonna get a little bit better.
How was the last one?
They had a couple hundred people show up, which was a pretty big deal, especially with our weather's been so bad, but with Emma helping get it out.
Do we have concession stands open and stuff, so people actually are able to, cool.
Yes, we have them open, and,
We've actually got a lot of,
swing them.
and we've got a lot of, the high schools, a lot of the schools around are contacting us to say, hey, we have prom this night, would you guys want to run a movie this night for us too? And so we're looking at trying to match up and marry up some of the events in the community that will also feed into this area.
What's your next movie?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, and it's next Saturday.
Spider-Man. Is it the next Saturday? I think it's this Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
We have a movie this Saturday.
Thanks, Maureen.
One thing that we talked about before a little bit was the aerial lift and the forklift
Yes.
for concerts. Where's that fit in? Is that our responsibility, or is that promoters? Because we use it
This definitely
both
is
ways.
yes, this definitely is going to lead to a greater discussion. At this point in time, the cost of those is being is being charged to the concert folks. So we will charge them the money for those things, the expenses for those things. And so I definitely think there's got to be a greater discussion surrounding
Okay, I just
that.
didn't know if you had put it anywhere. I hadn't noticed
I
it
did
in
not,
here, so.
did not put it in there. Because it should be,
No, if we're fronting that though,
oh, you're right.
you've got to build it into here.
Could we,
and offset it with revenue.
could we put it in just the concert line, or does it have to be specifically spelled out in that concert line? So we have the concerts line, and this technically is for the concert. It's the same thing with the sheriff's
High school
office.
rodeo
Have
this
we
time
been-
last year.
Right.
Concerts. We're fine, it's in the trust.
Okay.
That was before you.
All right.